here's Brody Brazil.
I realize to those that have not been following the Tampa Bay Rays situation, when they try and put all the pieces together, it seems and feels pretty wild. Hurricane Milton and the destruction of Tropicana Field, the temporary stadium for 2025 at the Yankees spring training complex, a stadium deal that was all in place. And then yesterday, the Rays officially backed out for good. It's hard to really put together all the pieces and have it make sense, but if you've been paying attention to the big picture and the long term here, almost none of this is surprising, including now the added reemergence of the Orlando Dreamers. I say added reemergence because they kind of put themselves back on the map in February when there was some uncertainty, and now here in March, with the Rays officially backing out of that stadium deal for St. Pete, the Dreamers are shooting their shot. They're throwing their pitch. Whatever sports analogy you want to make, that's what the Orlando Dreamers are doing. And again, it is so predictable. I feel like their entire existence is based on the fact that the Rays have been so unstable in the last decade in terms of finding a permanent solution, a permanent home. Right up the road in Orlando, they're thinking, hey, we're a big market. We could probably get the right investors and investments, and we could get this done. And the moment the Rays slip, we're going to be there to pounce. And that's kind of exactly what's happening right here and right now. To recap the Rays situation, Tropicana Field needs about $60 million in repairs. The team has basically said they want to make that their focus, but that means the city of St. Pete is going to have to pay that $60 million. And unless they start pretty much in April or soon after that, they will not have Tropicana Field fixed up by the start of the 2026 baseball season. So money and time are both going against the Rays. Even though they've kind of put that weight on the city of St. Petersburg, the Rays say 2026 is right now where they're planning to have their season at Tropicana Field. But again, money and time both kind of go against that. It's uncertain yet whether those two things will actually be a definitive option. Paying $15 million for 1 year at Steinbrenner Field is what they're doing here in 2025. Again, that's the home of the Yankees, so at least that's sorted out for here and now. But beyond that, a new stadium deal would have given us some solidity, would have given us some answers to this overall problem here. The city and the county were in, but the Rays have now officially backed out. So it's over. There's no more stadium deal. There is no more something on the other side of this bridge, because it's not necessarily Tropicana Field yet, and it's definitely not going to be this new stadium project. So with all this uncertainty, Orlando reemerges. And they've had these renderings for a while, I want to say dating back to last summer, and they've had a group out there, they've had a plan, they've had some details, and I'll give you all the nuts and bolts of that here in the information, but I also want to give you the latest developments of what the Dreamers say matters most to their existence, and quite honestly, that's money. That's investors. The Dreamers have now announced that they have two things, and I'm reading their words here because their words do matter, and how they announce this and the words they chose, to me, they matter. They now have, quote, an anchor investor for the control ownership group that has been identified, end quote, meaning that they have somebody who plans to be the primary owner of the baseball team. There's two parts of this. Somebody's got to own the team. Somebody's got to pay for the stadium, right? So whether it's relocating a team and buying it, somebody's got to pay for the team, and somebody's got to pay for the construction of the stadium. They also have, quote, a letter of intent for a significant portion of stadium financing that has been received, end quote. So an anchor investor, not maybe the entire investment, but an anchor investor, one that's largely going to get you there, and a letter of intent for a significant portion of stadium financing. They don't have anything guaranteed from City of Orlando, Orange County. They don't have all of that lined up yet, but they're basically saying we have a large dollar amount, and they'll give that dollar amount, which I believe is $1 billion, in just a second. Not all the specifics, but in generalities, they're saying we have two major things that are part of this process. Jim Schnorf is the co-founder of the Orlando Dreamers. Jim says this, quote, the financing structure will provide a minimum of approximately $1 billion towards stadium construction costs under an arrangement that is highly attractive to Orange County government and citizens, team ownership, and Major League Baseball. Well, $1 billion is kind of where you have to be, right? If your stadium's going to cost 1 point something, let's call it close to 2, where's the other billion, by the way, going to come from? Has Orange County committed to that yet? Like, we're throwing numbers out there, but unless we're saying, hey, we're covering all of this, there's always going to be some uncertainty as part of this process. And yeah, how about the fact that whoever buys in the team might also want to buy in on some of the property and land? They've got money. They've got 2 sources of money, one for the team, one for the stadium, but it's not like every last T is crossed and I is dotted here. There are some things left wide open. You would imagine that to be the case, but I think it's also impressive that they have these commitments for that much money for something that is not even promised yet. Schnorf goes on to say, quote, regardless of what the path is for acquiring an MLB franchise for the Orlando area, be it expansion or relocation of an existing team, the Rays, getting this aspect of the process correct is critical. Even with the relocation of a franchise where an existing control owner wants to remain in place, Stuart Sternberg, there will be a need for some Central Florida area ownership to assure that all the necessary local enthusiasm and support is in place. Essentially, they want to make sure, the Dreamers do, that even if somebody comes to Orlando, relocates the team, as the Rays would do, and if Sternberg wants to stay part owner, that's fine, but they need to have enough to be the control owners of the team and make all the most important decisions about this franchise. They say they have the structure in place to do that. They also came out, the Dreamers did, with some other selling points here, and I'll kind of run through their list. They say that enthusiasm in Orlando for Major League Baseball is reaching a, quote, fever pitch. Okay. I mean, I haven't seen that yet, and I don't know how you quantify that. People are talking about it, but I don't know. It's not like dominating the national news cycle, like there's something so big happening in Orlando. It's just, that's one group's opinion and description of it, right? So we'll put it that way. 80 million tourists is what they're expecting in 2025 for the Orlando area. Obviously, all of the theme parks, and that Dreamers ballpark, by the way, is set to go, the parcel of land that they're aiming for and the money that they've got now towards it, right next to SeaWorld. So to them, they think tourism is important. When we talk about Las Vegas in Major League Baseball and tourism in Major League Baseball, I still don't know the complete dynamics of having a team and trying to base tourism as a large part of your attendance. Baseball just has so many games, and the repetition of it and the everyday nature of it. I understand if it was once a week like football, then tourism makes sense. I mean, it's an interesting part of Orlando. It's a huge dynamic and business aspect of Orlando, but I don't know the direct link. It's never been done before. What other market in Major League Baseball relies on tourism? None. And it's kind of always been that way. Orlando also passed Denver recently to be the number 15 media market in the United States. This year, 2025, they're expected to leapfrog Detroit to get up to number 14 overall in media market size. And I mean, I think that's a metric that used to matter more as we look at the future of baseball and streaming broadcasts and a wholesale option that baseball would offer for all the teams. Maybe media market size doesn't matter as much, but in terms of sponsorship, ad revenue, certainly in the next handful of years, at least the next decade, it still is a factor. Orlando says, or the Dreamers say, Orlando would be the largest media market right now in the country without a Major League Baseball team. They also quote, 25,000 permanent jobs would be created because of this, $40 billion in economic impact over a 30-year span, and an additional $26 million going towards county taxes created by this ballpark project alone. Again, an additional $26 million in annual additional tax revenue. And those are their numbers, right? When groups come out with numbers like this, I'm not here to promise you that at all. I'm just saying that's what their pitch is, believe it or not, or if it pans out like that or not. The Dreamers came out with these 2023 specs of what they wanted to build. I already showed you the renderings. It's 45,000 seats. It's a dome stadium. It's right next to SeaWorld. It's also going to include retail and office space and 1,000 hotel rooms because, of course, right? This is what projects are. They're not just the ballpark anymore. It's a real estate deal. And that's what the Dreamers want to do. $1.7 billion project. That's the 2023 numbers. I guarantee you that has ballooned above $2 billion now. $975 million in public money is what they were initially aiming for, right? And so it kind of seems like they're still on that target and track. If they're committing a minimum of $1 billion and maybe they're still seeking about $900 more million, that gets them to basically the $2 billion mark of what this would cost. The Tampa to Orlando drive and factor and the 90 miles away situation, I mean, this is very much like Oakland and Sacramento. And even if the Rays can't figure out a permanent solution in Tampa or St. Pete, like if the Trop's not going to get fixed, if the city of St. Pete says, you know what, $60 million for 3 more years and no certainty that you'll stay, it's not worth it. Well, then maybe Orlando makes the pitch and says, all right, come up here, play at the minor league or the ESPN and Disney complex, have that be your home. We'll house you in Orlando, see if you like it, and if you do, maybe make a commitment up here. It's unlikely that Major League Baseball would ever coexist in both Tampa and Orlando at the same time, in my opinion. And I know there are markets like Chicago, 2 teams there, New York, 2 teams there, Los Angeles, 2 teams there, although LA and Anaheim very much separated. But the point is, even 90 miles apart, I just don't think Major League Baseball would put a 3rd team in Florida. There's only one way for Orlando to have a team, and that's if Tampa doesn't have a team. If the team in Tampa moves up the road to Orlando, this is like their best chance of getting this done. 74 million tourists, by the way, in 2024, so they're expecting, 6 million more here in 2025. And so for all these reasons, Orlando's going to push itself out there and say, we deserve this. And their co-founder was the late Pat Williams, who passed away this past summer. And his wife Ruth, said this over the summer regarding Barry Larkin, who I'm about to tell you about here. Quote, I'm just so happy that Pat's dream is living on. I think Barry Larkin and others are going to make this happen. I think fans in Orlando want baseball. And so Pat's got the experience with getting the Magic in the NBA in Orlando and had all the connections of starting the Dreamers. And now Barry Larkin's involvement is this, a 25-year resident, and he's raised his family and kids in the Orlando area, says he was all in to help. His official title with the Dreamers is now MLB ambassador. You'd have to think, right? He's got the eyes and ears of Commissioner Rob Manfred as somebody who played all those seasons for the Cincinnati Reds as their shortstop. So he's got a grip on baseball like not a lot of others do. He says that Rob Manfred recently told him Orlando is, quote, an interesting and realistic opportunity. Larkin also had another quote, which you would kind of come to expect from somebody who's so rooted, so entrenched in Orlando that they're trying to get baseball to come there. He said, quote, it's become apparent to me that Orlando is the most compelling market in the country for the next MLB franchise. Again, that's Barry Larkin's words, not Rob Manfred's words, but Barry is very much putting himself behind this project and is trying to get it some momentum. And when he did a public press conference at the beginning of February, WESH television was out there, and Darren, one of their reporters, said, Hall of Famer Barry Larkin says Rob Manfred has told him MLB is prioritizing stability amidst volatility. Well, guess who thinks they're stable? Orlando. Guess who is definitely volatile right now? St. Pete. Tampa. The Tampa Bay Rays. One thing Orlando is not is volatile. One thing Orlando is stable. That was Larkin's quote. Darren also had coverage here about the finances at that point. And again, this is, more than a month ago, 5+ weeks ago. If I understand correctly, the Dreamers say they have $450 million committed in private funds to go toward a new dome stadium in Orlando. Obviously now they doubled down on that money. And who knows about the tax revenue and generation and what they would do to really sweeten this deal for the county or anybody else. But it seems like they have taken on more interest and more investors as part of potentially getting a team to come to Orlando. So here's my takeaways. Number one, obviously the Dreamers are very much reemerging right when the Rays are most vulnerable to relocation. All of this is 1,000% strategic. I already said it before. The Dreamers basically exist because the Rays are so volatile and unstable. If the Rays had their situation lined up already for the next 30 years, the Dreamers wouldn't have much to say. They really wouldn't have a platform to stand on, but because of this situation and because of now backing out of the stadium deal, they definitely have a seat at this table. Even if the Rays are not willing to sell, right? And if Stuart Sternberg is going to really try and keep him in St. Pete, is going to have him play it out at Tropicana Field until they can figure out a redo, maybe in Tampa, maybe at the Ybor Harbor site, whatever it is, he's going to use this Orlando just because they exist as leverage, almost against Tampa and St. Pete. Everybody knows this Orlando thing is out there. This is not a secret to anybody. And so because there is a suitor 90 minutes and 90 miles away, anything else that gets done is going to be done with the knowledge that there is competition for this. Let's make that very clear. I already mentioned that Orlando could be a temporary home for the Rays as soon as 2026. I mean, imagine this. Sternberg pulls out of the stadium deal as he recently did, wants to move the team to Orlando, wants to sell a controlling interest in the team. He does that. The team can be up and moved to Orlando and ready to go at that Disney stadium by 2026. Like, they could have already played their last game in St. Pete and going into their last season right now in Tampa at the minor league facility. And the Orlando stadium situation wouldn't be a lot better, but it would move them to Orlando. It would have them one step closer to that commitment of ultimately building this new stadium that's being proposed. And I feel like I keep saying this, but it's so true and it's so honest. I've seen this movie before with the A's and obviously now the Rays, and the Royals might be next, and the White Sox. What happens if they don't get that stadium that they want on the South Loop in downtown Chicago? Especially with the A's and going 90 miles away to a bridge to something else, and that something else isn't even locked in. I mean, the Rays just pulled out of a stadium deal. The A's say they're fully committed, they're doubling down, but they've still yet to break ground on said new stadium, not at Tropicana Field, at the Tropicana Hotel site, the former Tropicana Hotel site. That's always a confusing one for a lot of people. Point is, I feel like there's almost a formula here. And I said before that none of this is surprising. It's almost like textbook, that the Rays are struggling, Orlando's right up the road, Orlando would be making this pitch. I don't know how this shakes out. I really don't know if they become a factor, the definitive factor in all of this, but it's no surprise they've put themselves in the spotlight, and this is their chance, right? Because if the Rays lock down and lock in somewhere else, Tampa or St. Pete, I don't see how Orlando actually gets a realistic next look. This is go time for the Dreamers. We'll see what it means for fans of the Rays. And again, I want to make sure that my position on all this is very clear. I hate to see this for Tampa Bay baseball fans, people who have bought in for the last, 30 or so years as members of the fan base, and now this, a natural disaster or two, an owner who literally had everything lined up that they asked for, and now decided to get cold feet and pull back and pull away. This is not fun. This is not how sports should be, and I hope better for Rays fans moving forward. That's the end of this video. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. Oh, thumbs are already up, so maybe you could do that too down below. Helps me and this video and this channel. Also, make sure you subscribe, so I can definitely see you back here next time.